All right. We've been studying about the book of Exodus here for a little while, beginning basically into three main categories that you're putting it into. Israel in Egypt and the first bit of that particular book, and then Exodus from Egypt to Sinai, and then that third one from Israel at Sinai. What happens when they come to Sinai, to the Mount Horeb? What takes place here in the 20th chapter? Giving of the law, right? And so you have the giving of the law in the sense of the Ten Commandments, that which was the, I guess you would say, overview, a summation of law. That it gave the summation of what the rest of the law was all about, what its basics were. Now, that doesn't mean everything was found in that Ten Commandments at all, or that's the only thing that was important, or everything else is less important. That's not the point. Point is, they were put into this particular kind of a design as a summation, and there are things that go together with each one of those that we're going to be talking about and even have to this point. Where we are tonight is on the specifications of the tabernacle. Because all of these things that we're going to talk about, the specifications on the tabernacle, everything else that are given in this Old Testament law, are from within what was given at Horeb, or from what was given at Mount Sinai. And so when you're looking at those things that are a part of the law, he's going to go through them in several different ways. He's going to talk about some of them with a kind of, I guess you would say, repetitive fashion. You're going to go over the same territory. For instance, we'll notice that with furnishings of the tabernacle this evening, and with other things as well that are a part of there. Some of those merely restating what was said before in almost exactly the same words, if not the very same. And sometimes adding to that or giving a summation with a little bit less than what had originally been given. But when you talk about the specification of the ark, notice the points that are made. There are supplies that are there, and we're going to talk about those in just a minute. The design of the ark itself, the table of showbread, the golden candlesticks, the tabernacle itself, and how it was to be arranged is not going to be in our lesson tonight, but going to start with chapter 26. I think you deal with that on Sunday, don't you? Kurt deals with that on Sunday. Some of the other matters there as well. As you notice, it goes down in here with the description, design, those things that are supposed to be about the various aspects or parts of the tabernacle or the priest and what he was given. Then you come over and there is what takes place of the specifications between the time when they're given and the building of the tabernacle. You have some reminders about the Sabbath that are there. You have these other things that are given as a pointed fact. And then you notice that ending with this particular one, remembering the Sabbath, being the first few verses of chapter 35. And that's where we'll be tonight as well. After that, you come with the building of the tabernacle, the carrying through. The design was given. All these provisions are made. Now there is this building of that temple. And then the assembly of the tabernacle. I call it the assembly of the tabernacle as when it's all put together. When you have the various things there, how do they all fit? What goes with all of that? Setting up the tabernacle, everything's already built. But now what do you do as you set it up? You'll tear it down as you go from place to place and set it back up. The consecration of Aaron's sons before you can have the tabernacle be used in the service of God. You have to have not only it sanctified, but also the people who are serving within it sanctified. And then you have the last of the manifestations of this. The glory of the Lord appears. This is what's sometimes called the Shekinah of God. And it's that shining, that glorious presence that is seen there. And so what takes place is you have that dwelling in the tabernacle. When they left Egypt, what led the way for them? A cloud by day, pillar of fire by night, right? And so you had that there. That shining is not new. What's new is it coming within the tabernacle. That now you have this manifestation of God's glory being there within the tabernacle. Now, if it had been guiding them all along, and what had been told them by God is you do everything just like I said, and then you have that Shekinah come and descend within the tabernacle, what does that say? Do what?
He's there.
Okay. In a literal sense?
No, it's more about the approval of what's going on.
Okay. 1 Kings chapter 8, when you have the building of the temple, that he says, I dwell in this place. He says, but do I? No, just does Jehovah himself dwell in this place? No. The heaven of heavens cannot contain him. How much less this house that we built? So the point is, Solomon and others recognize, no, it's not his literal presence there. It's his glory. It's his blessings. It's the sense in which he is with them. His care is over them. All of that is looked at. Now, what will happen when that Shekinah goes away from that tabernacle or that temple? Because that happens later in Israelite history. What does that say? All right, the opposite. That no longer do you have God's guidance, his help, his care, his protection, his guidance. That's gone because you didn't listen to God. And now you're just like any other nation out there, and this place is just like any other place. It wasn't the place that was the thing that was consecrated. It was those who were worshiping God and God who was seen to be the one who is the point of focus here. It isn't anything just inherently in a building. Okay, anybody got anything else there? Anybody else? Okay.
Harry?
Yes, go
Where
ahead.
do you get that word Shekinah?
From the Hebrew word that's there, the glory, it's called the Shekinah of God. And it's spelled differently with different ones. I asked a Hebrew teacher of mine, the first one I had, I said, why is it that you can find 15 different spellings for any one word in Hebrew? He says, because that's about how much we know about it. You know, the idea of being able to spell everything out, we have to have vowels and some other things in there. The vowels are not given in Hebrew. They're most of the time in the manuscripts that are there, they're not ones that we don't have any clue what the vowel is. It comes down through oral tradition, and we're not really totally sure. And some of it, the way one language would say it, another was different. For instance, you have a lot of these lexicons and everything else that were first written. The first real studious use of Old Testament and New Testament languages was in Germany. Why? Why would you think in Germany? Where Martin Luther and some of those who were associated with the Reformation were. And that's where the beginning of a lot of that work was. And so you had them translated, these words, transliterated over into German. Well, does German match English with regard to vocabulary, or with regard to, what am I talking about? Letters, yeah. Letters are the vowels, the consonants, neither one match up. And then you go with others the same way. So that's just what's generally used as the word Shekinah, is the way that I've always pronounced it. It is that glory of God there. All right, anybody else? Okay. Now, let's look at the overall sense of the tabernacle. What's going to be done from this point in time? As you start in chapter 25, you're going to be having an overall look at it. It'll go into various parts of it. sometimes coming back and dwelling with those a second time, sometimes in various ways, coming at a particular point, maybe 2 or 3 times, coming up in the design that is given. But you're going to be talking about the tabernacle itself, the building that's back here, as you notice. The laver that's there, the altar, burnt offerings that are within, and the furniture that is within that tabernacle. So, when you start out and these provisions are about to be made, let's look at the first 9 verses. Will somebody read Exodus 25, 1 through 9, please? Go ahead. Go ahead, Tyler.
Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel that they bring me an offering. From everyone who gives it willingly, with his heart he shall take my offering. And this is the offering which ye shall take from the gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, fine linen, and goat's hair, ram skins, dyed red, badger skins, and acacia wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, ox stones, and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. According to all that I show you, that is the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, just so you shall make it.
Okay. Now, if you did your questions and everything, you know this is almost exactly what's repeated in what chapter? 35. You have Exodus 35 giving this almost the same thing again. What's the difference between the two? Who says what to who in each case? Here, the Lord spoke to Moses. How about in chapter 35? Moses speaks to who? All right, to the congregation or the assembly of the people. And here Moses is being told by the Lord what to do. And he says, here's what you do. You get an offering together. I want you to think about that word that's used here. And if you would like to look this up, I think it can be a real helpful study to you. In verse 2, when he says, the offering, take for me an offering, that word really is the word for heave offering. There's a hoard offering, there is a burnt offering, there's various kinds of offerings. This is called a heave, H-E-A-V-E offering. What does that suggest? What do you think of when you heave something? Do what? Okay, heavy. What else do you think? Okay, it's given in. There's an effort that's there. Okay. It's also called a free will offering. As you go through Exodus, what you notice is those two terms are used interchangeably. You have a free will offering and you have a heave offering. Now, because you've done the lesson, you know a little bit of the background to that. Those who are going to give the heave offering, out of what would they give it? A willing heart. Thus, the free will. And from this point on, you're going to notice those associated. It might be called a free will offering, may be called a heave offering. Okay, so let's think about this a little bit more. Now, when you heave that offering, you throw that offering to God. What's the symbolism? If I'm going to heave something, I'm not going to do 2 fingers like that, am I? I'm not. It's like we used to do with bales of hay. You get that thing out there. What does that suggest? What's the picture of that as you look at it? Do what?
Big or large.
Okay, big or large. What else? Where's it coming from? Okay, it's coming from here. It's coming from you. This is an effort that you're bringing forth from yourself unto God. It's not a small thing. It's not talking about it being something extravagant or anything. This is something that requires of a man a forethought and a giving that involves of himself, that comes from him. and goes to God. Now, when you look at all of this and you see what was given, why a heave offering for this? What were they taking up an offering to do? To build the entirety of the tabernacle and all of the furniture, overlay it with gold, all of those various things.
It wasn't supposed to be a tax. It was supposed to be something that they were
This is
giving
a free will
willingly
offering.
and,
Yes.
like, to show that devotion to God.
That's right. And this is the point that's being made. This can only come in this way. This had to be a huge amount of money that this was all worth, of things that were there to be stored. It had to be a humongous amount of things like that. When you look at all of this, but remember that I've always thought of that heave offering as being just like you're bringing of yourself and you're giving of that heart, is what it kind of looks like. You're throwing out that heart to God. And that's how this is pictured. And it's the same thing as you run across in the Old Testament, free will offering or heave offering. You're going to be talking about the same thing. Go ahead, Scott.
Wasn't some of the preparation maybe for these articles, like back before the Passover? Didn't the Egyptians, they get a whole lot from the Egyptians
Correct.
on
And
stuff
they
like
took
that?
it and that was theirs.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean,
Yeah, and now we're going to give it.
mhm.
But why would that be a great gift if he would have said, you take everything that the Egyptians gave you and give that to the building of the tabernacle? Okay, it wouldn't have been free will, number one. What else?
It was theirs, they had to give it.
Okay. Well, when you have this, it was given to them, like you said, right? They could have kept it. But now here they give it. It has to be a free will, so it's a free will offering to go from there. It tells us something about the willingness of the people to serve God. There's something that's seen here that's indicated to where they have this, and at that time they have to be thinking, man, we made off like bandits with all this stuff. And now what happens? Now what happens? He says, okay, now here's this to build the tabernacle. You take up an offering for this, and not only was there enough that was taken on, it was overflowing of what was sufficient to do that. Let me ask another question about this before we get too far off. Free will. Why a free will offering? What they decided to give from the standpoint of themselves.
Shows their commitment.
Okay, shows their commitment. Now free will from God's point of view. Why free will is what he wanted them to give.
Because when you make somebody do something, there's not much reward back to you in it, like say that, if I'm saying that right. When somebody shows, you know, to kind of put it on our terms, when somebody shows to be willing to serve or to give or to honor, it means something. When, you know, you take your child and you make him do something, he's doing it because you make him. You know, that's really against his will.
Right.
And when you see a child come out and obey and do the things that he should be doing on his own will, it's very rewarding. I think that's what God wants, that love back, to be our own decision and not something that he created.
So God is looking for that out of the person themselves. The will initiated with them. Go ahead.
I think the other thing that, and I don't think that I had thought about it before, that just shows the wisdom of God is that by doing it this way, and even with what we give, you know, in our contribution, is if there was a required amount from certain individuals, you know, if there's a set amount, then it could devastate families in some conditions, and it would be, you know, a drop in the bucket for others to where they don't even notice it. And it's just impressive
selfish and giving to us, and so to have that quality and that characteristic back to Him.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question to get into something else, just getting that mind working a little bit more. The free will was of the individual to give that existed there before they gave, right? The obedient action was preceded by a willing heart, correct? How could that be if Calvinism is true? How could that be? A Calvinist says that you're born without any good, totally depraved. You're born without any good or ability to think good until the Holy Spirit moves upon you and gives you this enlightenment. That's not true. That never has been true. That's one of the fundamental things about the Reformation theology of Martin Luther and others that I can't figure for the life of me. How did they come out with that? The concept of free will is at the very heart of anything that has to do with the old law or the new. All of it is suggesting I do something towards God, reverence towards God, out of my heart, not out of Him making me do it. Or giving me the desire that's there and saying, okay, you do this. I listened one time to one of my professors in Baptist Seminary talk about the free will offering, and I absolutely had to keep myself from busting up laughing because he didn't get it. He talked about how, well, here they are, they needed to give, but God really, you see, He was in them before having them will this, but they had to be willing to do it. And by the time he got through playing gymnastics, I didn't know where in the world we were at. The idea is simple. Free will is at the heart of things, and it's there being taught in the Old Testament too, with how you get this to be done. At the very fundamental, there's a will that's within man to either do that which is right or do that which is not right. And he makes that up for himself. God didn't make him do either one. But before I can do anything that's acceptable to God in obedience, what has to happen? That has to come from a willing heart. There isn't any such thing as rote obedience or actions I can do to cause me to be saved apart from a heart that's willing to serve God. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. And neither one of those can stand by themselves. All right, anything else there? Go ahead.
You know, we tend to get upset with this group because they complain so much, and you know, it's like you see what you're getting, why you're complaining. But you know, we don't have any record of any of them ever, when they loaded up the tents and headed on, a whole family of 500 said, nah, I'm just going to stay right here. Y'all go on. I like this place. It's beautiful. So, I mean, they were in. You know what I mean? They just made a lot of mistakes along the way.
That's right. That's right. They have some things that are very difficult that they have to overcome. And sometimes they're stubborn, kind of like we are too. And we need to remember that. Anything else there? Okay. Let's go on then and note it. Whoops. I'm sorry. Come back. Last part of it. Let me make a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, according to what? All that I showed you, that is the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings, just so you shall make it. Then he goes through with those first three pieces of the furniture in there, talks about that, and we'll get back to that in a minute.
Eric,
Go ahead.
sorry, I thought we were just on that one point. If you go back, do you think they really use quote-unquote badger skins, an unclean animal, or do you think that's a mistranslation?
I have no idea what that is. Some of them say porpoise skins.
Right.
Some of them
That's
say
what I was
seal
reading.
skins.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what that animal is.
Okay. I know it doesn't matter, and it's not
Yeah.
a matter of salvation like some of
Okay.
the stuff we've been discussing,
Yeah.
but just
Let's
wanted to
get
thoughts.
back on this one, though. The pattern of the tabernacle, according to all of it, you shall make it. Last verse of the 25th chapter, and see to it that you make them according to the pattern which was shown you on the mount. Why is it both sides of that are bracketed with a statement about being careful to do everything according to the pattern? What's being emphasized?
Importance.
Do what?
Said it's important.
Okay, it's important.
Maybe I showed you.
Okay. You heard that anywhere else? All right. Well, Noah, he was doing according to the pattern. Go to Hebrews. Hebrew writer talks about this fact that it was to be done according to the pattern. The idea is something what was shown is supposed to be duplicated. The pattern is what was shown, and that pattern is supposed to be duplicated by what was made. And this is the point that's being raised all through here. Therefore, what do you have the right or the authority to do? Exactly what's said. No more, no less. You're going to need to do exactly that as God gave it. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a few minutes. Anybody else there on that? This tabernacle or this tent of meeting, here is the way you have everything being laid out with the most holy place in the back portion and the holy place here in the front portion. You have the things of the furniture within the tent of meeting, whether it be the Ark of the Covenant or the altar of incense, the candlesticks there, the table of showbread. All of that is put from within. We'll talk about those a little while tonight toward the end. And then it starts telling about the various kind of coverings that were there. When you look at all of this and you notice what's said about all of it, it's obvious that we're talking about something that is ornate. It has a great care and meticulous work that is to be done unto it. The furnishings within that tabernacle are noted in our text tonight. One having to do with the ark. The ark was this right here, right? This box. What about the mercy seat? That was on top of it, and what happens here with these wings of the cherubim? I kind of think about those lofted much more in a typical way of being there. But those cherubim wings, or cherub is one, cherubim is two or more. And so you have the cherubim wings that are here outstretched. And within that portion of the mercy seat and that section of the cherubim wing, in that area was where God said he would appear to them. His voice was there. That glory, that Shekinah would appear there, and that would be a representation of God's presence among them. Well, then you had what else? Table of showbread is given as well. Kind of a table, 4 legs. It has some poles there on either side of it, just like the ark. And then you have the lampstand that is given. Now, all of these are pictured in what chapter? You got Exodus 25 and Exodus 37. 37, 1 through 9 there. Now, with the showbread, the table of showbread, you have that, Exodus 25, 23 to 30. And then you have it, Exodus 37, 10 to 16. Then you've got the lampstand, Exodus chapter 25, verse 31 and 39, and chapter 37, 17 through 24. Now, let me ask something. All of these were supposed to be done according to the pattern that was shown, right? How long was this, was be the width of this ark, and its depth, and its height? All those were given, specified, right? Was that specified for the table of showbread? All of those were specified, just exactly, here's what the proportions are to be. How about the candlestick? Or the lampstand? You've got it being pointed out. You've got something of that middle stalk being talked about. 3 of those tubes from any side of that as they went out. And those couplets to be there with all of the oil so that they could always have a fire burning in that sort of a way within the tabernacle. So you had all of these things specified with some exactitude that's given, right? Why?
Because he wanted it done.
That's right.
Try to get a committee to agree on what to do. Here's how to
Okay,
do it.
besides the committee.
Well,
What?
he wanted it done.
Okay, want it done, and you want it done how?
His way.
Here's what. You don't just do this any way you think is good, whatever else is there. You do it exactly like this. He didn't say 2 3/4. He said 2 1/2 with regard to cubits. All of these kind of things. Now, I want to ask you these poles that they were to make. How wide in diameter were those poles supposed to be?
Well, have to make an inference, okay?
Okay, we're going to say how big?
They were to be used for carrying.
Okay, don't mess me up. You're getting ahead of me here. Can anybody tell me exactly what diameter they needed to be?
Fifth reach.
They're wood overlaid with what? Gold. I know that because that's what it says. But now, when you look at this and you say, okay, well, I can do whatever I want to do then on those poles. I couldn't do that either, could I? What were those poles for? Now you can go for it, Kurt.
They had to fit in the rings,
Okay.
and they were to be used for carrying.
Okay. They had to be ready to carry that. If you decided to make poles about as big as my pinky right there, would that hold that piece of furniture? If I did it that way, would God be pleased? No, but you can say, well, you didn't say not to. He didn't say all these other things, but what he did say was what it was for. I want you to think about this as an illustration with something on an expedient. Those poles were expedients to carry that ark. For something to be an expedient, it must do what? It must aid, or it must expedite the happening of something. Do you have songbooks given to expedite prayer? What are songbooks for? They're for singing. If I had something there about all the prayers that we could offer and put those in a songbook, I'm like, wait a minute, we've changed the whole point of this thing. There were poles, they were to carry the ark. It was to be sufficient to do that. The exact diameter or whatever is not given. But it's within a realm of judgment to expedite what was taking place. Now, if you can get the point of that, which I think is an obvious one, then think about any other term that we're talking about with regard to how something is authorized. It's authorized as God said it, showed it, or inferred it, or I guess you would say he implied it and we infer it. Now, how am I going to do that, though, if I'm told I need to build something, the exact nature of it is not given? Then it's going to be something that has to expedite its purpose. You see the point? There's an authority for that pole being made out of wood, being overlaid with gold. The exact diameter is not given, but it's meant to be done in an expeditious manner that would facilitate what it's for, carrying that ark. Now, you can take anything you want to with regard to Old Testament or New and how to establish Bible authority. If you have the principles down of how are you supposed to know how the temple or the tabernacle is built, or how Noah's Ark is to be built, you have everything that's there. about the necessities of establishing Bible authority. It's just a simple kind of a means of looking at that. Anybody else got anything on that? Okay, go ahead.
Just a few details. I mean, he did not say how long to make the poles. He didn't say how many people it was going to take to carry it. But he did say that the poles were going to stay in the rings, which means the poles could not be wider than the tabernacle. So
Correct.
you might have to sit down and make a few things, but the final thing to me is that a great portion of this, and I don't know how much detail, was shown to Moses on the mountain.
Right.
He had not only received the written word of what it was describing, but he had seen, had he seen what a cherub was? I don't know what a cherub looks like.
Either. All right, we're going to get on. In chapter 35, you have the statement with regard to the Sabbath ordinance. Then Moses gathered all the congregation of the children of Israel together and said to them, "These are the words which the Lord has commanded you to do. Work shall be done for 6 days, but the seventh day shall be a holy day for you, a Sabbath of rest of the Lord. Whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. You shall kindle no fire throughout your dwellings in the Sabbath day." So that point had been given there of the ordinance. When had this previously been given? An ordinance of the Sabbath.
Exodus 20.
Okay. We'd heard that in the commandments. Any place before that? Was it commanded in creation? Do you have anybody keeping the Sabbath between creation and these people?
No.
Never had that given. You have a lot of Seventh-day Adventists saying that was done. You can't find a single thing of that. This is the first time that you have an ordinance with regard to all of those things. In verses 4 through 9, you have Moses giving a commanding a commandment of the offerings, the free will offerings, there in verses 4 through 9 that we talked about. God told him about it in chapter 25. The articles of the tabernacle are listed in chapter 35, 10 through 19. Then you have the offerings for the tabernacle being presented in chapter 35, 20 through 29. And then you have the artisans that are called for the tabernacle, and that's to build it, being given verse 30 through 35. So we got everything ready, right? It's going in the right way. We've got everything ready. And in chapter 37, it talks about these again that are given as we noticed. But there's another one. The altar of incense is given there at the very end of the 37th chapter. You've got that in verses 25 through 29, that you have that altar of incense being declared, how it's to be made, and also how the incense to be burned upon it is made. All right, we didn't have a chance to get to the questions tonight, so you can check those all with Kurt's sheet, because I know he's right. But anybody got anything that we didn't cover that you want to note here this evening? The acacia wood. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that's not something that's given here. It was gathered for a while before that. Don't know how that was done. When you come to the temple, most of it is from where? Lebanon, you remember. David had put up the wood and everything of the what would be needed to build the tabernacle. He was the free will offerer, if you will, for the temple. He had gathered it together. Then Solomon was the one who had put it together after that point, according to the pattern given of God. All right. Anybody else?
Mary, I would just say, I think I appreciate you bringing up Hebrews chapter 8, and I think that there's so much there for us to learn, not only about from the Old Testament, but the New Testament, and how blessed we are to be in this new covenant.
Yeah.
And the blessings that are reminded in Hebrews 8 that we have because of Jesus
Yeah.
And his sacrifice.
We're going to have the last week of this class. The evening will be or the one will be a Sunday, and then a Wednesday evening will be in December. It'll be the first Wednesday evening of December. We'll finish this class off. And what we're going to notice, I'm going to take both of those classes to go through and notice some things like we did with Genesis, the purpose of the whole book, or bringing some things together of Exodus together, and the purpose of law. The purpose that God gave in the Old Testament law, the things that are pointed out there, what you have as pointed out by Aaron as a blessing of the New Testament, of not being under that law any longer, but being under a law that's given of Christ, which is one of a different kind, and one that has all that the people in the Old Testament were looking forward to, what they wanted. Sometimes I don't think we take enough thought in how much what we have today is something that a very few people in history have ever had. And it ought to be seen as such a blessing, and we sometimes look at it as that which isn't much. And so we'll be doing that. All right. Well, I'll do there. We'll stop, and Kurt will take it up at that point on Sunday, Lord willing.